Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 150 of the It's a Pictures podcast. My name is John Gilpatrick, and joining me, as always, for the 150th time is.
Max Colville.
It's not really the 150th time we've done this.
No, I mean there's bonuses and all sorts of things, but this is the official numbered 150. Like if we were like thinking about the official like Bond films and not covering like Never Say Never Again, then this
Yeah,
would be like the official
yeah.
150.
I was just thinking about all the times that I missed that you found somebody to take my place.
No, I think I covered those in the canon episodes.
Yeah, the 100% they count. That's just sort of one of the James Bonds is on assignment that day. But yes, it's 150, so that's pretty cool. I remember our 100th episode. I was in a different house. Feels like it was probably right in the middle of lockdown, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean we joked about the trains. If you listen to those old episodes, maybe you could hear
Oh,
the trains go by.
well, this is like the third place I've lived that we've recorded in, and this is by far the quietest. It's the only one without a train running by. Um, but yeah, that is funny. Like, yeah, the first like 110 probably episodes are very train heavy. And not a peep in my. I mean, the only thing that you might hear in the background in this house is my cat screaming, but but hopefully she's under control for this. But yeah, 150, pretty cool. We were trying to think of what we wanted to do, and we're doing something that's like a cross between like kind of a normal episode, I think, and a special episode. And we're going to focus on Disney. They're doing a big 100th anniversary blowout. If you haven't heard, somehow don't know about this. It's their 100th anniversary, and they're marketing that, and we're going to piggyback off of that for a big anniversary ourselves. So we're going to focus on Disney animation. We've done Pixar before, so you can go back and listen to that. Going to kind of table that. We'll table everything else, Disney live action stuff and so on, and focus on like proper Walt Disney Animation Studios and the long history of those movies.
Yeah, it's surprising, like, just how far back they go. It's like I had some idea of, like, maybe when they first started coming out, and then I looked it up and I was like, "Oh, they're even older than that." So,
Well, I had this idea, like actually not that long ago. It was like sometime last year where I was like, I'm gonna go back and watch every Disney animated movie. And I only got into it three, the first three, and then I moved on to something else. But it was fun. And yeah, maybe I'll pick it back up. Too bad I didn't do that in advance of this episode. It would have been really good content to be able to actually speak about all of these intelligently instead of trying to remember things from when I was 5. But we'll do the best we can, and we'll touch a little bit on that, kind of nostalgia versus the newer movies and so on and so forth. Um, Before we get to all of that, some news. I guess the big piece of news in the film but larger entertainment world is the WGA strike, which seemed like it was imminent for a while now and finally went into effect. Probably like a week ago, as of us recording here.
yeah, I'd say that's about right.
Um, so this is the Writers Guild of America. This is their second strike in about 15 years. Kind of famously went on strike in 2008, and a lot of TV seasons were shortened. Movies were paused. Some movies that had already gone into production couldn't be rewritten. Famously, I think you mentioned James Bond, the Quantum of Solace movie. I felt like was one of the most affected movies, and there was a lot about how Daniel Craig was trying to rewrite scenes, and I think if he didn't already, very much appreciated the job of writers after that experience. Um, but this one's kind of a big one. It's I think largely a reaction to streaming and the way that has changed how money is made in Hollywood and for writers, and this idea that something could not get a theatrical release, and there's not really a way to make money on the back end, if I'm understanding all that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, that was the same thing Scarlett Johansson was fighting when Black Widow
Yeah.
went to Disney Plus during the pandemic, and she was promised a lot of back end residuals, and when it didn't hit theaters, she was kind of like forfeited that money. I think, John, a lot of what's come up too is not only streaming, but the rise of AI.
Yeah, I was
Even
gonna get to that. Yeah.
yeah, even since the beginning of 2023, AI has just skyrocketed. From Chat GPT being used to write scripts or to do high school students' homework, to image creators creating trailers or images that,
Aren't
you
real.
know, yeah, they look real, but I mean, the technology is close, right? It's not quite there yet. There's things that it's still messing up, thank goodness.
We can
uh,
still stop it.
yes.
Someone is
All
there
right.
a hero?
Yes, so Sarah Connor, please. But yeah, I think there's a lot of that too. Like, there's just has to be like some kind of limits, or people can't just lose their jobs to AI writing scripts, and they have to protect themselves. And um, yeah, I mean, unless you're uh, just not caring about writers or people making your art, then I'm sure you're on the side of the writers and want a better deal for them. It's obvious that there's such big contributions to everything in the art world that we enjoy. I saw some funny signs, John. Testament to the writers, right?
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, pay us or we'll spoil Succession."
Ah.
I
That's
was
pretty
like,
funny.
"Oh, right where the heart, right in the heart." Um, and I guess Hollywood's already seeing some television stoppages. I've read that shows such as, like, I believe Evil or in Stranger Things and Severance have paused
Oh.
while the writing strike is on. Um,
I had never heard of Evil. I don't give a fuck about Stranger Things, and then you say Severance, and it's just a kick in the nuts with a steel toe boot.
yeah, so some of these shows are just gonna be on hiatus about shooting another season or getting going because they're supporting the writers and what have you, and maybe the scripts aren't even done. You might have noticed already, uh, like daily television stuff like the night shows
Yeah,
and SNL is kind of like off air or not running
yeah.
uh, as usual, as they depend so much on the writers. There was some conversation, John, about like how much audiences will be affected this time around because of the glut of content there is, and like maybe some people will be like, oh, I can take this opportunity to watch said show that I've never seen, because there's just so much. And like maybe like Netflix even has stuff that they make so far in advance that they'll
Uh,
be dropping new shows all the way through the end of the year and not really feel the burn of this unless it goes on like 100+ days like the last one.
yeah, that's an interesting thought. Would make sense. I don't know. And also, how far in advance were they able to choreograph this? I mean, I started hearing whispers about it. I feel like earlier this year, but did the studios know like it was going to get to this point that they weren't going to budge because the stakes are high for them? And I think most, if not all, are probably in debt from getting into the streaming wars. So they're not looking they to say we won't cut costs via AI if that's an option. It feels pretty intractable. And I would say for the writers, like in a lot of ways, existential. So I'm hoping that they hold out as long as they can, that it gets to a place where they can get some healthy
Concessions.
concessions from the studios. Thank you, and that uh, you know it'll be what it'll be. I don't really know how to like tell people how they can like support writers right now. I'd like to do that. I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm not sure if it's
Okay.
like don't see movies in theaters or whatever. But whatever you can do, support them right now, please.
No, I think there is a website that has some information on what you can do, and it's actually www.wgacontract2023.org.
Okay.
And there's some things about how to take action and how to stand with writers. I know some people have thought about like dropping their streaming accounts. I don't know if that's like gonna be like a drop in like the bucket type deal. Like you could do that if it helps you feel better, but I don't know if there's going to be enough to really uh, affect these big companies
Feels
in a
like it
wide
needs to
movement.
be like very heavily organized.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
but I guess more to come. I suspect it's not going to be resolved by the time we record next. So we'll see kind of where things stand then, I suppose.
yeah, I think like the negotiations are going through the other branches too. I think I read that like the DGA will hear about it, and then the Screen Actors Guild and the actors. So
All right. Very interesting. Okay, so moving on in other news, it was May the 4th last week, and on top of that, we get a lot of Star Wars news annually. What were some of the highlights of what was announced this past year, or this past, I guess, event?
yeah, so on May the 4th, Disney celebrated it with a bunch of stuff on Disney Plus. They had like a new season of Star Wars Visions, which was the animated um, series of Star Wars shorts. I reviewed the first season and it mostly focused on Japanese anime studios, but this
Hmm.
time they included studios from all over the world, like the Cartoon Saloon, who does uh, the Wolf Walkers and Secret. I think it's the Secret of Kells.
Yep.
Um, that studio contributed a short, and Aardman Studios, who's known for the Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep shorts, also
Yep.
did a short. So those were two big studios that I definitely still need to check out their contributions to Star Wars. Excited to check out that. For me and my family, there's a new like children's Star Wars show, which is pretty neat or well past due. Because I can't imagine even like watching like maybe a 6-year-old maybe could watch Star Wars, but even that's like kind of like intense, I
Yeah,
imagine.
I can see
So
that.
yeah, so it's probably better that they have these other shows. And I just think to myself, like, oh, why don't they just have like a Grogu show where Grogu does silly things for kids,
Oh my
and
God.
that would like do gangbusters.
Yeah, you'd think.
Because yeah, because a kid will enjoy Grogu, but there's no way a kid should watch Mandalorian, right? So, um, it's a funny predicament. Um, so that was cool. I have to watch some of that, and I think they did another Simpsons short. But before May the 4th, they had another Star Wars celebration this year, and they were hoping to announce some new feature films that uh coming to theaters. Star Wars. I mean, they had a lot of projects that they've announced, John, but they go by the wayside or they haven't happened yet. And here's Kathleen Kennedy came out with three more that she thinks maybe will will come to fruition. Who knows? But they're going to be movies that are directed by James Mangold of Logan and the upcoming Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny. Dave Filoni, who is responsible for The Mandalorian and the upcoming Ahsoka series, and the Academy Award and Emmy Award winning director Sharmeen Obadi Chinoy, who directed the Ms. Marvel series. I think she is actually going to do one with the actress Daisy Ridley, who
Yeah.
did who played Rey, and it's going to continue Rey's adventures after episode 9. There was some excitement about those announcements, and whether or not we'll actually see those movies come to fruition, right?
It's a fair question. It's a fair question. The list of would-be Star Wars projects at this point is considerably longer than the list of actual Star Wars projects.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, they were even talking about some new series coming out. I think like there's one that I'm intrigued about called like Skeleton Crew, I think,
mhm.
and I guess like some like the Daniels directed an episode, and
Uh-huh.
I think like Taika Waititi directed an episode or something. So
That's cool.
that'd be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Star Wars, I hope that they figure out what to do with it. I like Star Wars, you know. I don't watch the shows. That's not really my thing. Um, and same with Marvel, like, to me, like, I draw the line on some of these properties at seeing them in theaters, but uh, I'd like to go to a theater and see us be excited about seeing a Star Wars movie again.
Yeah, I think like people, or at least many Star Wars fans that I heard of, like really loved Andor.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I just,
I didn't get around to it. I think I watched maybe the pilot and then like I didn't get back to it.
well, the writer's strike is here, Max.
Yeah, then maybe it's time to get to Andor. But I didn't watch any of the new Mandalorian season 3 that just premiered. So
It's just too much.
yeah, too much, Star Wars, too much Marvel.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe the world is waking up to that.
Yeah. Well, John, should we have an aside and say that
It wasn't on
Guardians,
our agenda,
yeah,
but
Guardians of the Galaxy opened up over the weekend, and
yeah, we might have a real battle on our hands here
I-
with our box office contest. That was our last record, and um, we debated should we take Guardians of the Galaxy off the table because it would be considerably higher than everything else, and ultimately decided no, we don't need to do that, and that was definitely the right call.
yeah, I think it was like 130 domestic weekend.
It was the
Opening.
lowest grossing, opening weekend of the summer Marvel movie ever, and that's not even accounting for inflation, I believe.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that, but
Yeah,
overall,
I imagine you're wrong. Maybe it's as of late or something, because I don't think Iron Man ever did that kind of business when it opened, and I thought that was a summer movie, but
yeah, maybe not. I don't remember.
it's over a decade ago.
Look, it did poorly.
Yeah,
It did poorly. They're not going to be super thrilled in Marvel Land after that.
it's all my fault, John. I planned to see this movie, but I did not go opening weekend. I said it will be there when I need to go see it, because it will probably be playing in theaters for about a month at least. So
It probably still will be, but you do wonder. Like, none of the Marvel movies over the last, since Endgame, have had any legs really whatsoever. And I do think it's becoming the sort of thing where it's like, it has this still like very devoted like group of followers who are going to get excited by every new movie. I have friends who are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe it's Guardians weekend. I'm going to see it opening day," and other people who have seen a lot of these movies who are just like, "I just don't care anymore." That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I haven't seen one since. I saw Black Panther 2
yeah, I
when it
feel
was
like
on Disney Plus.
after Endgame, it gave people like a drop off point, and like you could like get off the bus and and
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely. I think that's definitely part of it. I also think that, like, for me, once the TV shows really started to kind of weave in, I was just like, I'm not. I guess I just am not going to watch these anymore because I'm not watching TV shows to know what's happening in movies. I already find it kind of obnoxious enough that I have to see every single movie to know what's happening in the next movie. And this is too much. And it's the same for Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars, at least it seems like they're disconnected enough where you could just watch a TV show and then go see a movie. But we don't know because they haven't really released any movies in the era of the TV shows. So yeah,
well,
it's interesting like where all this stuff is at right now. I feel like there's a restlessness among the most of the general populace, and are they going to kind of adapt?
well, John, if it helps at all, I've heard that Guardians 3, the people who like it because it kind of exists on its own. They
I've
kind of
heard
let.
I've heard that too. And it was one of the reasons why I liked Guardians 2 more than a lot of other people. I was like, yeah, this is like kind of a mess, but at least it's self-contained, which is kind of all I was asking for a long time from a Marvel movie. So this sounds like something else that I might enjoy more than others. I just haven't gone to it yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. So I wanted to put one more news thing on this list. During CinemaCon, Disney showed up with a new trailer for their upcoming animated film premiering in their Thanksgiving spot this year, is called Wish, and it carries a lot of baggage according to the trailer, because it's like, oh, we've been waiting a century for this film because it is positioned as the like celebration of Disney 100, and it stars Ariana DeBose, Chris Pine, and Alan Tudyk. And it looks from the trailer like we get that classic Disney villain that looks like Chris Pine is playing after seemingly a long run of films where we didn't have that Disney villain part. I don't know. It looks pretty interesting. It's coming out, like I said, November. So, yeah, maybe they're high on it. Maybe they're just hoping it's good. Their last November film was, I
Yeah.
think, Strange World,
Yeah.
and that was like a huge bomb for them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting when you say it's like the Thanksgiving slot, which has been a thing, but it was not magical necessarily for them last year at this time. So, hard to say. I think there's probably a lot of reasons for that. And I don't know if it was anomalous or not, if this is going to kind of bring people back into the fold. I mean, this is a good transition, I think, to the
sure,
state,
that's why I
Disney
included
and the 100-year history. It's like, they've been embroiled in some stuff this year that is like complete culture war bullshit. But, Bud Light sales are down 25% over the last quarter as well. So it's like, are they going to have trouble appealing to everyone like they have historically for the last 100 years? I'm very curious to see.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see if this culture stuff has anything to do with it, John. I think I don't know what Disney's theme park attendance is like right now, but I don't hear big reports saying, oh, attendance is down big.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, they have a full slate, which we talked about some of their movies last show with Indiana Jones and
Yeah.
the Marvel movies, and even I don't know, Haunted Mansion. That's another one.
I guess so, right?
Yeah. So Disney has plenty of movies still coming out, and but we're gonna focus now on their animated films.
Yes, let's go back 100 years. What's you have a kid also, so I mean, I feel like it probably your relationship is maybe even deeper still than mine. But you watched a lot of Disney stuff when you were a kid, I presume.
Yeah, and right now you mentioned having a child. Like, it's funny when you watch a lot of these Disney movies, you're like, oh shit, that's not appropriate for a child that age. So I mean, like some of the newer stuff, she's been enjoying. We've been watching. Um, she's hooked on the Frozen movies, and
Oh god, yeah.
she liked a little bit liked Encanto and Moana.
Oh.
But this past 2 weeks it's been Cinderella. So
Oh,
and
a classic.
yeah, she's been enjoying that one, and her mom always loved that one. So that's what we've been having. And I don't know if you remember that one, John, but there's a scene where like the sisters are singing like out of key,
I
and
don't remember that.
they like kept that on the soundtrack. So my daughter's like, "Oh, I want to hear the Cinderella soundtrack." And I'm like, "Do we have to?" It's like Cinderella doesn't even have that like great songs. It's like Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo is like 20 seconds long, and so
That's
it's not
funny.
great. But yeah, that's where we are. And yeah, I have my own history with Disney movies for sure.
Well, talk a little bit about that. Like, what are some of your memories from when you were a kid? Do you remember sort of what your first Disney movie was? I mean, we talked about this before, roughly the same age. And, we were kids, I think, during the quote unquote golden age of Disney, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and John, it's funny when like I look at like the release dates for these things, like I get thrown off because like for me as a child, it didn't make much sense. And one of the earliest movie going experiences I remember was seeing like an edition of 101 Dalmatians in the theater, and certainly that wouldn't have been when that film came out because that was
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting you
1961.
say that because that is like a big element, I think, in the history of Disney, especially animated movies, is that like before. home video was so popular, and even for a long time after home video was popular, like they just re-release stuff all the time, and you went to see it in theaters.
Right, yeah, and they had that whole Disney Vault thing, so if
Because
you
then they had, yeah, the vault, which was just you can only buy the VHS tapes or whatever for a certain period of time, and then they were not available, and you'd have to catch it at a re-release if you wanted to see it.
yeah, before eBay and Craigslist, and you could just, like, buy the tape off somebody else.
Yeah, 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 totally. It's kind of funny that we got to that because for me, I like one of the first times I remember going to see a Disney movie was weirdly enough the first ever Disney movie, which was a Disney animated feature film, which was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which came out in 1937. I was a kid, probably like 1992 or three maybe when I went to see it.
Yeah.
And I remember my parents sitting my sister and I down, and like we were going to go to the movies, and we could choose which one we wanted to see. And we were either going to go see Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or Dennis the Menace. Do you remember Dennis the Menace?
The live action?
Yes.
Yes, I remember that movie.
And I wanted to see Dennis the Menace really bad because I thought Snow White was like for girls, and like, no, thank you. Like, that's lame. No princesses for me. I want like a rotten kid instead. Um, and so my dad said, well, would you rather see a musical or a comedy? And I'm thinking to myself in my head, like, I don't really know what comedy means, but I know there's music in Snow White. So I'm going to say comedy. And so I said comedy, and then my sister, who I think like had no idea what was going on, she just said, "Okay, yeah, that sounds fine." And then he said Dennis the Menace, and she started crying hysterically. He said, "Fine, we'll go see Snow White." And I really like Snow White. I was like, "Oh, this movie is awesome."
Yeah, it's a good movie, and it's funny, John, because it's just like I remember back. You say musical and comedy. It's like I remember when I was a kid, I'd hate the music sections of Disney movies. I
Yeah.
thought that they were so boring. I was like, let's get back to the talking. And of course, now I can appreciate the music, and it's so much a part of Disney movies.
And of course, the Golden Globes were like, "There is no difference between these two things."
Right.
um but yeah, I think that might have been the first time I went to see a Disney movie in theaters, at least an animated movie. I certainly saw like we had the VHS of Little Mermaid, which is my sister's favorite because she's a redhead, so she identified very deeply with Ariel, I believe. And we watched that a lot. We watched Beauty and the Beast a lot, and Aladdin and Lion King, and I remember seeing Lion King in theaters like multiple times also.
Yeah, I remember that too, and like how devastating that movie was.
It really was, but
It
I
was
also
for
go ahead.
those who are older than us who are listening. I didn't experience this until later, but imagine like when you watch Transformers the movie and Optimus Prime died like 20 minutes into it. That feeling was for us when Mufasa died in Lion King.
I saw a funny, like, I think it was a meme or something online of like trying to explain like the plot of the Lion King really simply. And it was sort of saying like, Timon and Pumbaa are talking to Simba, and it's like, oh, so like your uncle killed your father and now wants to kill you too. Like, how about you try not worrying about it? But it is, it's a it's a fun movie. It's darker than I think some of the other ones, at least from my memory of the time. It felt like it was darker and sadder and more visceral. And also it is, just Hamlet, which is kind of crazy.
Right.
I don't know if I've ever talked about this on air or to you off air, but when I was a kid, I was involved locally in some like child acting. And I played Simba in like a musical stage version of The Lion King.
You had the titular role?
Well, I mean, I guess so, yeah.
Wow.
I know. It was a big deal.
And you're now on Broadway regularly?
Yeah, right. Absolutely crushing it.
Yes.
But yeah, I remember that in my Simba costume, and just absolutely nailing it in every scene.
Yeah, so we talked about maybe our first Disney movies. You mentioned like some that were in rotation at your house, but do you remember like maybe some of your favorites when you were growing up?
Um, I mean, Lion King was big for sure. We watched Peter Pan a lot. Not like the most politically correct of the movies, I think nowadays. You can say that about a number of them from like the probably pre 60s era. But that one, just the Peter Pan story, we had like a lot of different like versions of Peter Pan. I feel like on VHS that we watched a lot,
Yeah.
including the Disney animated version. Um, so that was one, and I would say Little Mermaid for sure. Like more for my sister, I think, than for me. It was a big one that we had on a lot in the house. How about you?
Yeah, for me, I think like the ones that I was enamored to when I was younger was stuff like definitely Aladdin. I know Aladdin would have been current for our age at that time, and like I remember even liking the second Aladdin quite a bit. Like
Oh yeah, well that was another thing was the direct to video sequels that they always did.
right. So yeah, big into Aladdin. I like the adventure of those movies and
Yeah.
the swashbuckling, if you will. I remember like watching Lady and the Tramp a lot
Uh-huh.
and really digging that one. That one's the famous pasta eating scene
Yeah.
and all that between the dogs. But honestly I've never watched the Disney Plus exclusive Lady and the Tramp, which I don't know. I can't tell you if it's good or bad. Probably bad.
Probably bad.
And then like another one for me, which I always think about in my childhood, was like Jungle Book, and
Yeah.
that adventure with Mowgli and Baloo and um, meeting everyone, Shere Khan. I just really enjoyed that book and book movie. I think it goes like how people can see themselves in these movies, right? And you were mentioning like you didn't want princess movies. Like maybe as a boy I was more enamored to the movies starring boys and their adventures and could see myself more in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's something to that for me as well. Um I don't know if this like I don't think this technically counts as a Disney animated movie. I think it was like co-produced or maybe it was released by Disney and they didn't, make it themselves, whatever. But we watched a lot of Brave Little Toaster as well.
Yeah,
I know it's
I like
technically a
that one
Disney
too.
movie, but it's not a Disney like animated studios movie. So I felt like just compelled to shout that out. But I always enjoyed that when I was a kid.
Yeah, I like that one a lot, and I like the offshoot, Disney offshoot. I think like from like Black Cauldron, people went to go make the Chipmunk movie, which is the Chipmunk Adventure, I think, and that's like one of my that's one of my favorite like animated features that to
Yeah,
just turn on and enjoy.
yeah, Chip and Dale.
No, no, no. This is Alvin, Simon, and Theodore.
Oh, those chipmunks.
Yes, those.
uh, yeah, for sure. Um, I guess like more recently, like I'm curious. We talked about when we were kids, but it's a little bit different. Like as you get it, a little bit older, like still watching these movies, do they have the same magical effect? Not necessarily, but I feel like there's still a lot to be enjoyed. Are there ones from the kind of you as a young adult or grown person you are right now that you really enjoy, especially?
Yeah, so definitely like I can appreciate a lot more of about these movies now that I've grown older and I can enjoy them not just for like their storylines but how they advanced animation or
Sure.
maybe um judging them by the number of absolute bops that they have on their soundtrack. Right, because I like to point at Princess and the Frog for this one, which is like
Yeah,
it has like two good songs, and then like the rest are like, yeah. Whereas the movie's pretty solid, but it's like you gotta have a lot of good songs to really make it upper echelon Disney tier, I think.
sure. Yeah, that's
And
fair.
that's why like some of my favorites include like Sleeping Beauty and Beauty and the Beast and Fantasia. Just how they advance the medium and their songs and stories and art. I actually recently I thought Sleeping Beauty was a pretty early Disney animated film, and then I found out that it was like maybe in the teens, like
Yeah.
it was pretty far along. Um, but it was known to be the first animated film to be photographed in the 70 widescreen process. So
Oh,
there is, I think it's only screened in Boston like 2 or 3 times in the last like 6 or 7 years where they screened the 70 millimeter print of Sleeping Beauty. And I think there's only like 1 or 2 of them that still exist. And I kind of regret not going now. And I'd love to see it in 70 millimeter. But yeah, Sleeping Beauty for me is just one of those like high octane stories. It has what I believe to be like the best Disney villain in Maleficent, and
yeah,
just like an epic finale with the prince fighting the dragon form of Maleficent, and animation, everything. I love that one. Um, we could talk forever about Beauty and the Beast. I'm sure our listeners probably have some notion about why I would have that in the upper tier, and certainly all the songs and its animation styles and the 3D sweeping dancing sequence was
yeah,
so groundbreaking.
totally.
That's certainly a film front to back, which has tons of hit songs
Oh my goodness, yeah.
and so enjoyable. And for me, I always think of myself as like picking like a dark horse with Fantasia, but I think that movie really colored a lot of my life, as in like my appreciation of like classical music. And
Mhm.
I learned a lot from that, and certainly the varied styles. When I hear some of those scores, I can't help but think to attach the visions that Walt Disney and the animators made um, to those classical music pieces now.
When I told you I went back and started watching these movies from the beginning, and I remembered Snow White. And it's very simplistic, and still enjoyable, but just it feels very 1937. Pinocchio is like a leap forward for sure, in just kind of the way, the storytelling and the animation, and I appreciated more, watching it last year, why it like enraptured so many. It seems to have enraptured so many, like, modern filmmakers, from Guillermo del Toro to others who've kind of cited it as really important and influential for them. And then when I got to Fantasia, I was just like, I watched this. I remember watching this when I was a kid. I didn't remember anything about it, and I was just like, this is like insane. I cannot
Yeah.
believe that like this is a Disney animated movie and it has a 20-minute overture. Like it's just like ludicrous. I could not even believe it. And it in really good ways. I don't mean that to sound pejorative. Like, I thought it was just like, it shocked me how much I appreciated it, and how kind of, how it would just never fly today.
Right.
But it was cool. It was great.
Yeah, certainly. Like one of my things that I like to reference is like when I watch the movie and the Rite of Spring passage comes on, and that's like all about creation and begins
Yeah,
at the very beginning and through the dinosaur ages and what have you. And as a child, or even watching the movie now, at that part is when the fatigue starts setting in, and I do get a little drowsy there, but also I don't think I can listen to the Rite of Spring without associating it with like creation now.
sure,
So
totally. Um, Another one I kind of wanted to mention was Hercules, which is much later. And but I think I talked about this on the podcast, that I watched this. This is, a while ago. It was probably around the, beginning of COVID, where I watched this movie, and there was a blank check series on the films of John Musker and Ron Clements, who directed this, and a few other Disney animated movies. But Hercules was one that, like, I remember seeing when I was younger, and I was probably just like getting to the point where I was like, is 1997. I was like into wrestling at the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
It's just like Michael Jordan, like, not like really thinking like, oh yeah, more Disney animated movies. And so I didn't really think much of it. I remember Hercules, like the animated series on the Disney Channel, all the time. And I would just be like, ugh, that was like an instant like change of channel for me. So I was kind of like curious about it, I guess, like coming back to it as an adult. And just I watched it, and it is so much fun. It just again blew me away. And again, I can't believe they made it. They'd never make a movie like this again today. It is just like this like bizarre like slapstick comedy. The music is awesome in this movie. I think that like I'm trying to remember the song now, the Herc is a Hero, which is just
Yeah,
like sung by the Fates,
a
and
hero to zero or
yeah,
something.
his Zero to Hero, or yeah, and then Go the Distance, which is kind of like the hero's ballad, which Michael
Yeah,
Bolton sings in the closing credits, and is freaking awesome.
I really like that there's a ballad too where I guess the female lead is like wondering whether or not she loves Hercules. And during COVID, I think Ariana Grande did a cover of that for one of those like Disney karaoke things that they did, and that was
Oh
really
yeah.
cool.
It's just so cool. Like, there's like hell, and I mean, he's a horrible person. He perfectly cast,
Yeah.
incidentally, James Woods is the devil, or whatever it's called, Hades or
Hades.
whatever. But yeah, it's a really delightful movie that I couldn't recommend highly enough.
Um, but John, like, do you have? I mean, like, obviously, when you were going through this, it's like blind spots, right, for everybody,
Yeah.
and that's like you think the most devoted like Disney fans. Because I think to myself, like, there's sometimes people list movies, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't think I've seen that one, or like,
Yeah.
I should watch that sometime. And one of the ones that always stands out for me that is a blind spot is The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh yeah, you've never seen that?
No, I've never seen that one. I've heard
Yeah.
that one's quite good and has that like dark edge to it for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's one I haven't seen since it, probably came out when I was younger. Again, I don't remember like being like super fond of it. But it's probably more for like, my life at that time when I was a kid, and just kind of feeling like I was growing out of this. But it's one I'd be curious to revisit for sure. Probably, it in my head it fits, along with Hercules, at least in terms of like my feelings toward it. Mulan comes right after that, and Tarzan, and then you're kind of getting into like almost, you're getting into more computer generated movies mostly from then on.
Oh, you know
um,
what I didn't include in the movies of when I was a kid? Like I liked the Robin Hood Disney movie quite a bit.
okay, sure, yeah, I remember that well, and Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh came right after that,
Yeah.
and that was one we watched a lot as well.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But for me,
That's a good
yeah.
one to watch with one young kids. I think after
Oh,
you
for sure.
saw
Yeah,
it.
because they're short, like little films almost.
Yeah.
For me, like blind spots, like there's definitely some stuff I haven't seen. Like, I feel like there's like these different eras where, you have like a lot of big movies, and then kind of a
A few
series of
duds.
movies that you don't know as well, and then kind of it's just ebbs and flows. Certainly like the run in the 40s, the 1940s, of Three Caballeros and Make Music My, like I don't know anything about those movies. I felt like that was like Disney kind of experimenting. They were certainly doing a lot of propaganda at that time, during World War II, and just kind of making weird things that like don't hold up and never got a lot of re-releases or anything like that. Um, so I don't know any of those.
Then
Of the
for
Yes,
me, there's a big stretch between like I want to say 1999 and 2009 where I didn't see any of those films.
that's definitely another one. Like, I watched Treasure Planet along with the Musker and Clement series, and that's actually quite a fun movie. I think you'd probably enjoy it. That was like a humongous bomb for Disney at the time. But like Brother Bear, Home on the Range, Chicken Little, Meet the Robinsons, Bolt, like I don't know anything about any of those movies hardly. Princess of the Frog kind of drew me back in, and that was a big one, not just because it was the first African American princess, but it was a hand drawn animation movie. And I was really excited about that at the time.
Yep, I definitely saw that one.
Yeah, I felt like I think I've seen everything from then on, or close to it. Like I didn't see Raya and the Last Dragon, but I think that's everything else. Big like Wreck It Ralph fan. The second Wreck It Ralph is actually very fun. Also, I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. I think I watched it on an airplane, but it was just I thought it was clever. Frozen, it's fun. The music is really good. I think well, this was before the podcast, but Big Hero 6. I thought it was good. Didn't love it. Zootopia, I think I like more. Moana is I think really strong. So they've made a lot of like they hit a groove in the 2010s that um, was easy to kind of stay in. And Encanto is like a really really big movie for them. And I thought that was really good too.
Yeah, and Kanto's story is so weird, John, because it's like I don't think it was like this big hit in the movie theaters, but
Yeah, I
once it
agree.
hit Disney Plus, it like took off.
I know. And the Bruno song, it's just like
Right.
all of a sudden, like 6 months after this movie left theaters, everyone is singing Bruno constantly, and I'm just like, how did this happen?
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get to another one of my favorite Disney topics when talking about these movies, and that's of course the songs.
Yeah.
There's so many great songs, and like I remember like when speak about Frozen, when Frozen came out and people were trying to determine where Let It Go belonged in the pantheon of Disney songs, and there was just so much like knee-jerk reaction to like say, oh yeah, this is definitely like a top 10 like all-star song. And as someone who's heard it quite a bit more in in the
Yeah.
last like 4 or 5 months, I'm again tired of Let It Go, and
Yeah.
um, don't need to hear that uh, quite again. Um, but I think like I like the darker Disney songs, and that would be more towards like the traditional like villain songs.
Yeah.
And certainly on my list of like three that I've selected here, um, there's definitely a big push towards villain songs.
Well, why don't you list those?
Okay, so my first one, my all-time probably favorite Disney song is "Be Prepared,"
Okay.
and
Yeah. 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 That's
that's of course from Lion King and has Scar singing, and just like the dark imagery of like almost like it like thinks of Nazi Germany, and like the all the walking of the hyenas, and I just like the delivery of it and the puffs of of smoke that go around Scar as he's performing. And they butchered that song for the remake recently, which just killed
God.
me. Um, yeah, so that's probably my favorite. I have nostalgia for A Whole New World from Aladdin,
Yeah.
and I think like that's one of the great like romantic ballads in Disney pantheon, and just like a song that you could take outside of the movie and enjoy. And then the other villain song that I have on the list is Gaston, and I
Um,
just really love the writing of that song, and just like every time I hear it, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good one. I mean, along the lines of villain songs that I think are really good, I'd put "Poor Unfortunate Souls" there with Ursula
Yeah,
from Little Mermaid. And I guess we're gonna see more of that here
Melissa
in a couple
McCarthy.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one's very good. Um, Friend Like Me, I think, is probably one of my favorites for sure from Aladdin, as you mentioned already, an Aladdin song. But just Robin Williams's like vocal performance in that and kind of the animation that accompanies it, it's so manic and just like, if there's like one vocal performance that, I could put as like my favorite in a Disney movie, it's probably that one. Um, so I'd put that one up there for sure. I already mentioned the two songs from Hercules that I really love. Zero to Hero, I'd probably put on my a top three list. Um, I think this was sung in the movie. I haven't seen it, in a really long time, but in Mulan, Reflection, which is the Christina Aguilera song. Um, I, she obviously does a version of it, in the credits and whatnot, and she does it again in the live action version. But always thought that was like a really good song.
I
Um,
like "I'll Make a Man Out of You" from Mulan.
oh
That's
yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, I just don't remember. I just don't remember Mulan super well. I just remember that song quite well. And I wish I had like some older ones. Like there's a lot of good ones, right? Nothing specifically jumping out. Um, Pinocchio has a couple great songs. There's the "I've Got No Strings," scene, which
right.
is great, and everything along with that. And than Wish Upon a Star, which is sort of like the Disney like song, that they adopted as their like company song.
Right.
Bare Necessities from Jungle Book, you mentioned, I think, already earlier, and as being a fan of that movie. And I think that song is one of the most kind of infectious of the Disney canon. So I mean, that's a lot that I really like. Some of the Winnie the Pooh songs are fun too, with the wonderful thing about Tiggers. I feel like we sang a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's certainly tons and tons of songs, and if you look it up online, people have done their own lists. I might carry this Disney 100 theme onto that newsletter and explore some more songs and recommend some more choices for people if they want to check that out.
Nice.
But John, what if you had to pick? And we talked about like having watched the Disney movies a lot since maybe 2009, right, with Princess and the Frog. Let's try to ignore the 2000 to 2009 because I don't think either of us watched too many movies. So
That's fine.
in the Disney canon. So maybe in the last 14, 15 years, which one of these do you think stands out as the classic to you? I mean, I think that for a majority of people and due to its success, like Frozen would be like the big one that stands out.
Yeah.
But do you have one that really resonated with you from this period?
It's hard to say. Like, what's the? It depends on how you're classifying it. Like, I feel like Frozen best captures like the spirit of the old Disney movies. But it also does so in a way that feels like a little less dated. Where the two female characters are given a little bit more agency and so on.
Yes, and
Uh,
it absolutely subverts the classic Disney tropes,
Yeah, but
and
it also like reveres them with just like the songs and just how like they're it's a classic bunch of songs. They recall that era that we all grew up loving. So I feel like it that like captures the spirit, but in a modern way best. I feel like for me, you know, if I had to watch one of these movies again, I'd pop in a Ralph movie for sure.
mhm.
And then I would also say that like Moana probably bridges those two things well, where it's like feels like an old Disney movie, has a lot of great songs, good animation, great lead character, is also fun in a way that as an adult I can appreciate more than Frozen. So I feel like maybe in some ways that's like the best of all worlds.
Yeah, for me, like for a long time, I thought that I really appreciated Tangled the most,
Oh, interesting.
and
I
I
yeah.
I, I like that one quite a bit, and there's some good musical numbers in that one too. But John, I did come around, and I agree with you that I believe like Moana is probably the strongest of the Disney movies in the last 15 years. I think like it has a character that is like really empowering and like she the villain in that is kind of like gray, right? Like is it
Mhm.
Maui, Dwayne Johnson's character? Is he really the villain, or is it just the crab played by Jermaine Clement, who appears briefly and has his own villain song? Um I just think it does a lot of things really well. Um the score is fantastic, and yeah, I think like though that's like the kind of Disney movie that I want to see,
Mhm.
and I think that it has that feeling of adventure and freshness that some of these other movies don't quite have. And um, while it seems crazy that they already want to do a live action adaptation of
Yeah.
Moana, speaking so highly of it, I can definitely see why uh, Disney would want to do that. But maybe before they do that, can we get like a Moana 2, kind of like they're doing Frozen 3?
That'd be fine. Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I'd prefer that over a live action remake for sure, which they haven't made a good one yet, in my opinion. But yeah,
I think
any
like in my opinion, like if I had a second on that one, like I think like Cinderella probably comes the closest as interesting for me of all the live action Disney remakes.
which one was that?
Um it had like Richard Madden from the Game of Thrones, and
Okay.
it had, I think, the girl from Downton Abbey,
Huh.
and I think maybe like Kate Blanchett played like the Wicked stepmother.
Huh. I
But
don't know. I saw that one.
yeah, it's a few years old now, but I given like how like that story is and like what you need to do to make it live action is like, yeah, that one kind of makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, I mean, anything that we didn't really cover here that you want to still discuss?
Oh no, there's so much to discuss, and we could certainly do many episodes. We could even devote one just to theme park rides, right? Because that's how much Disney is crazy.
Yeah, you're not
Uh,
kidding.
but I hope that everybody enjoyed this taste of Disney as much as John and I liked talking about its history a little bit, and yeah, seeing where Disney goes as we get older, and many more movies to come.
Beautiful. Sounds great. So we're gonna leave with what you've been watching here shortly, but before we do all that, we'll let you know how you can follow us. Our podcast is on Twitter at It's the Pick Pod, and Max, you're at.
MH Colville on Twitter for now.
Oh, ooh, that's exciting.
Well, there's so many like other offshoots, right? Like I need to get like one of these what you call it, blue sky like tags and get over there or something
I don't
because
even know what this stuff is anymore. But let me tell you, it's great not knowing. It's great not knowing. But okay, yeah, more to come on that. I'm very excited. But additionally, you can send us an email at itspictures@gmail.com with your let us know what your favorite Disney movies are or, favorite Disney songs, whatever. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or any other podcatching app. While you're there, please leave us a review. 5 stars will help other people discover and enjoy the show. We're also on Letterbox at It's Pictures, where you can see what we've been watching and various lists and all that stuff. And then there's the Substack at itsthepictures.substack.com, where Max is writing about.
what did I write about most recently? I think I was oh yes, I talked a little bit in a mini review about um the movie I'll be talking about and what we've been watching, which is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Awesome. Very good. And maybe some Disney content coming soon.
Yes.
So I haven't really watched anything. I'm still behind an episode of Succession. Um, I have been keeping up with Top Chef, if you want to hear about that. It's been good. But I don't think I've watched a movie in a little while, so I'm gonna just pass it back to you, and you can jump into Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to see this based on reviews. And John, are you familiar with the director's last movie, Edge of 17?
Yes.
And I love that movie. I think it's a
Yeah, it
fantastic.
was very good. I
It's
wasn't
a
as high on it as some other people, but I thought it was very good.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic coming of age film. I think like maybe its premiere got a little lost. I think it
It
had
came out like
the
Thanksgiving time.
yeah, and it got the closing night film of TIFF spot.
Oh,
So
yeah,
like
very interesting.
that kind of like is like the forgotten spot.
Yeah, 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 totally.
Because like I think the TIFF closing night film this year was like Dollyland, and you've heard nothing about that.
I
Like
don't
that's
even know what that is.
I think it's like a Ben Kingsley movie
Oh, man.
with like Ezra Miller in it too. So
Oh,
yeah. Oh. So but Edge of 17, I really love that one. Great coming of age story, and this is the new one from that director. She decided to adapt one of the most famous young adult books of all time, written by Judy Blume. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I actually watched the new Judy Blume documentary, Judy Blume Forever, which is on Amazon Prime Video, which you can check that out if you're interested in more of her life and how she wrote these stories. But yeah, I would have never had any history with this book because I wasn't a big reader in school. Not only because I probably would have looked at it and was like, "Ew, girl book," but it was mostly just that I didn't like reading in general because I thought it was homework. So as I've gotten older, I get to appreciate things more, and um, I'm interested in the messages of this movie, and there's there's plenty here for other people other than either the people reminiscing about the book, because I guess the book came out in 1970, so people who grew up with it now who are in their 60s probably were like, "Ooh, this is like the book that I read when I was a kid. I want to see the movie."
Hmm.
Or I guess what the movie wanted to target, which is like young girls from like the age of like 13 to 16,
Hmm.
because like it's rated PG-13 for a stupid reason known as menstruation.
Oh,
Um
okay.
yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. The story is mainly about a girl who's 12 years old and named Margaret, and she's moved to a new school and she's worried about growing up and wanting to increase her bust size and get her period first, and there's a lot of that stuff in there. But there was also a lot of stuff that resonated with me with her search for religion. Obviously, with the title "Are You There, God?" hints that it's going to be a lot about religion. And in the movie, we discover that both of her parents come from different religions, Judaism and Christianity, and they decided instead of fighting over what religion she should take, they would just let her find her way. And in that case, when she's 12 now, she decides that she's got to explore a lot of different religions and decide which one is ultimately right for her. And um, myself, coming from mixed religion parents, uh, I kind of resonated and saw myself a little bit in that.
Mm.
Um, and the movie's just like it does take place in the 70s, so they didn't update it to like current age. So there's like still a lot of 70s isms in it,
Mhm,
where like
mhm.
the costumes and passing notes and things that you would expect from that era in the story. But yeah, I think like Kathy Bates plays the grandmother and she's fantastic, and Rachel McAdams plays the mother and she's great too. And um yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I think that for those who seek it out, they would probably enjoy it too. I think I reviewed it on an edge where like I think like in the future people will like find this movie and it will be like a classic to them. Like
Yeah.
maybe like it's not there yet, and like maybe like someday it will like have that like Princess Bride effect. I know that's like blasphemy to say like any movie will have the Princess Bride
Okay.
effect, because like that movie seems so instilled in our culture now, where like when it came out it was not everything, but now there's people who can quote the whole movie. So
But that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, like it's not something I really honestly knew that much about, but have seen and heard a lot of people talking about it since its release, and so it's definitely on my radar. And glad to hear that it had an effect on you, and that you recommend it as highly as you do. So I definitely would say it's something people should check out.
yeah, it's funny, John. I even mentioned like there was the scene in the movie where she's like going with her girlfriend to try buying sanitary napkins or pads for the first time, and like she's so nervous about buying it at the checkout counter, and she's like, "Oh, thank God, it's a woman that's there," and then like it gets changed to a young guy, and
Oh.
I'm like, I remember those experiences when trying to buy condoms, right? It's not those are very um stressful times for me. Uh, so I could definitely see how that can be stressful.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Um, all right, cool. And then you saw Past Lives?
Yes, this was the closing night film at IFF Boston, the one film that I went up to see, and this was like the most awarded film at Sundance. Like people loved it out of
Mhm.
there, and it's directed by Celine Song. I think it's her directorial debut, and it's just like this really wonderful romance where um, these two Korean children, um, they grow up together, and when the young girl turns 12, they decide to immigrate to America and just like leave everything behind for a better life. And but her friend, the boy, never really forgot about her. And 12 years later, it's like the infancy of like Facebook and like um Skype, and they find each other again. They're able to talk, and and something happens, and they get disconnected again for a series of years, and they pick it up again for a third time, another 12 years later, after she's had a life of her own and got married. Um, he finally comes to America to see her, and just like whether or not these uh, deep hidden feelings will come out now and jeopardize her life at this time.
Mm.
And you know, I think it's like a really great romance. Like I think a lot of romance, like a lot of classic romances and movies, people love them because they're like these like will she or won't she? It's like stuff like Casablanca is classically one of the best romances of all time, and it's based
Hmm.
on will she or will she not cheat on her husband for this guy who she met for a week and loved. So I just think these stories just tend to like resonate with people, and what ifs, if you will.
Yeah.
um, and I think that this will play well for a lot of people. It's a A24 film that's coming out this summer. I'm sure it will be like a limited rollout. I think even as we're speaking right now, I think it's having its Chicago premiere at the Chicago Film Festival. So
Oh, okay.
um, yeah, I think people are pretty high on it, including myself.
Cool. Very good. Sounds interesting. I guess people will check that out in the next couple months in theaters if they are able to. And I guess that's going to do it for us. Anything else you wanted to add before we get out of here this week?
No, I guess John has already told me he probably won't be appearing on our next
Oh, yeah.
episode. I will try to pull a guest for that one, and make sure we keep up our bi-weekly uh meetings.
I'm sure it'll be a great episode that I will look forward to listening to, and we'll connect again after that. Thank you for listening as always, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.